The Love Song of Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot. The date of publication of this poem is somewhere in the year 1915, and it was first published in a literary magazine, um, which was called Poetry, a magazine of verse. It is believed that this is the first poem that helped T.S. Eliot make his debut as a published poet. If you look at the time period or the literary period of this poem, it is uh, modernism, which started somewhere in the earlier years of the 20th century. And why it is considered a modernist, a masterpiece, the reason is not only because of the time period, but it is also one of the initial, you know, writings which um, reflect upon or reflect the fragmentation and disillusionment of that age through the character of J. Alfred Prufrock. The technique that the poet has used is a stream of consciousness technique, which is one of the modernist techniques of writing poetry. And stream of consciousness technique basically tells us about the inner happenings of the mind of the protagonist. Um this poem is very famous for its ambiguity, multiple layers of meanings, and obviously, when there are multiple layers of meanings, there are multiple interpretations as well. So, this uh, multi-layered, a literary masterpiece being multi-layered means that we are being exposed to the psychological happenings of this protagonist. And uh, this also brings us to a very important point, and that is the themes of the poem. You are going to find these themes in a bit of detail in the later parts of this video. However, the basic themes that mark this, literary text are the existentialist crisis through which the modern man was going through at that time. Then there is a theme of fear of aging, the fear of getting old. Then there is a feeling of alienation despite living in the society, or in social terms, you call it societal alienation. This poem is also a critique of the modern life, which has which may have enabled man to accomplish or to conquer the inconquerable. However, we find that despite all these, conquests, man seems to be alone. The genre of poetry this poem belongs is dramatic monologue, as we find that most of the, rather the whole of the spoken word is from the mouth of J. Alfred Prufrock, who is the protagonist of the play. The poem comprises 131 lines, and they these 131 lines are divided into various stanzas according to the uh, you know various stanzas of different lengths. Now, this varying length shows us that um, sh- varying lengths, they show us the crisis, the chaotic mind of Prufrock. Some of his reflections are very small, whereas others are very deep, very intense, and it seems as if you are going through the journey of J. Alfred Prufrock with his psychological journey with him. We are also experiencing what Prufrock is experiencing at that time. Um, you would find before starting the text of the poem, please keep this thing in mind that this poem has uh, you know uh, has a constant shift of ideas. From one idea there is a very sudden shift of ideas, or a sudden uh, transfer from one topic to another. Why is it done so? Because T.S. Eliot intentionally wants to tell you about, or tell the readers about the ambiguity that surrounds Prufrock. Not only the ambiguity, but it also tells us about the insecurity and self doubt through which the protagonist undergoes at that time. Now, these are some of the things that you need to know before moving on to the text of the poem. However, there are other points which you are going to find in the subsequent slides. To appreciate Eliot's writing style, it is very important to understand the context in which he wrote. Eliot was born in the year 1888, which means that he grew up at a time which was marked with great social, political, and cultural upheaval in America. Not only in America, however, in the whole of the world was being affected with the effects of, or the aftermath of colonization. To top it all, to top the whole anarchical position, or the whole chaos, we find that uh, you know uh, uh, at a very young age, T.S. Eliot had to go through World War One. The time period of World War One is 1914 to 1919, or the end of 1918. So uh, Eliot was hardly um, 30 years old when he uh, went through the whole trauma of World War One, and he witnessed the aftermath of World War One as well, which resulted in the collapse of traditional values and the rise of industrialization. This is the time when man had started to, depend more on machines than uh, on his own talent, on his own skills. These influences deeply impacted Eliot's worldview, and Eliot used his poetry as a medium of expression, of the trauma he was going through because of the World War One. Furthermore, we come to know that Eliot, and you are going to find instances of this in the poem as well. Eliot is a very, he was a voracious reader, and because of his habit of reading, he had an extensive knowledge of literature, of philosophy, of religion, and these things combined together uh, to uh, influence his writings as well, as you are going to find that his writings are full of allusions, and these allusions are mostly these allusions are from the classics. As you have already been told in the introduction that uh, Eliot belonged to the literary era of modernism. So, you need to have a brief overview of that time period as well. So, modernism as a literary movement marked from a departure from traditional forms, that is, the traditional genres and conventions. It challenged the established notions of poetry and sought to explore new modes of expression. uh, and we find that these characteristics are prevalent in almost every modern poet. If you have a uh, if you analyze the situation of that time, you will come to know a few things, which I'm going to elaborate a bit uh, in the upcoming part. Please remember that this modernist movement, uh, which started in the earlier part of the 20th century, it was characterized by the by an age characterized by experimentation, an age which is highlighted because of the experimentation and fragmented narratives. Fragmented narratives means this term means that you are you know people or writers no longer followed the traditional plot sequence. They if the more people wrote in during this age, the more they experimented with different forms of plot, and uh, their writings were, did not seem to be one whole. Rather, they seemed to be uh, as if the writer himself, along with his characters, is undergoing through the cha- he is also experiencing the chaos of that age. The chaos, by the term chaos of that age, I mean that this was when Eliot started to write, it was the post World War One era, and this period was marked by the disillusionment and a loss of faith in traditional institutions and values. By the term traditional institutions, we mean mainly politics and religion. So these two things, or these two phenomenons, no longer seem to be the cure of any problem. And we come to know about this uh, uh, because after World War One, uh, we find the establishment of League of Nations, and this League of Nations was basically established to prevent war. However, we come to know that this did not happen, and there was another war after uh, almost, 15 or 16 years. So people, 15 or it was actually 2 decades when World War II started. So those traditional, institutions, they had lost their value, and even in this poem, you are going to find that fragmentation and disorientation that was a result of the that war. Moreover, you are going to, as modernism tells you about the urbanization and industrialization of that age and its failure to bring mental solace to the people, you are going to find this phenomenon in the poem as well. uh, Most of the writings of that time were psychological in nature. They, instead of telling us about the situation, about the development of characters, uh, or physical development of characters, you come to know that it is basically, these writings were more marked by psychological exploration and the inner workings of the human mind. And this, a poem, the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, also is a long introspection of seems to be a long introspection of the protagonist. Moreover, because of this age, we find that some existentialist crisis or concerns are also crises, rather. I'm not going to say crisis, crises. People wanted, concerns were addressed during the literature that was produced at that time. Um, we find that uh, this literature was basically, you know, it's centered around uh, people's or the characters' quest for identity, and this became the highlight of that period as well. Then we also come to know that because modernism is characterized by literary experimentation, we find a lot of new poetic devices, a lot of new symbols, a very innovative use of language, and a departure from the conventional forms. And these things were basically, you know, uh, used in order to tell us about the psychological aspect of the characters. So this was, in a way, an intentional endeavor to make the people realize what uh, sort of life people were leading at that time, the anarchy through which they were through which they uh, underwent, and the mental consequences of that anarchy. As a result of such, the outer anarchy, we find that these modernist poets aim to capture the fragmented nature of human experience, the complexities of subjective perception. That is, they focused more on their personal perceptions and the disillusionment of the post World War One era. Then we come to the to a very important topic, and that is Eliot's role in modernist poetry. Uh, Eliot played a very significant role in the development of modernist poetry. It seems as if his role was more of a bridge between the past and the present, drawing inspiration from the literary tradition while incorporating modern sensibilities. And we come to know about this in the course of the text as well, through his use of allusions and references. We find that Eliot has he has a knack for, or he has a skill for integrating different voices. For example, when you are going to read the text, you are going to find Dante in Eliot's uh, poem. You are going to find Hamlet there, you are going to find Lazarus there, and you are going to find some unconventional symbols like, or comparisons of uh, human beings with animals like crabs who are scuttling across the sand as if looking for something. However, sand is infertile, it does not produce anything. So same is the case with Eliot's characters. So he skillfully integrates different voices, literary allusions, and uses intertextuality. Intertextuality is combining or comparing, or compelling the reader to compare various texts, and we find this quality in his work as well. By doing so, he very successfully creates layers of meanings. ठीक है? He uses uh, or he's very successful in uh, you know um, compelling the uh, reader to do a mental exercise. And it, at many points of his poems, we find that we are absolutely agreeing with whatever he says. uh, he Because of his multiple layers of meanings and his complex narratives, we find that he reflects the multifaceted nature of modern life. Moreover, his innovative form, his innovative technique of writing is you know more uh, uh, intensified through the use of language and imagery. And through such techniques, he challenges the conventional poetic techniques, pushing the boundaries of what poetry could achieve. He is not a follower, he is a torchbearer of his age. Coming to the poem, we find that the central character of this poem is J. Alfred Prufrock, who is introduced to the reader in the very at the very onset of the poem. And it seems as if he is introducing himself. It is not Eliot who is introducing Prufrock, rather, Prufrock is introducing himself. And through the introduction of Prufrock, we find at the very beginning of the poem that the reader delves into his internal struggles. It seems as if Prufrock is going through some struggles, and these struggles affect the reader as well. And the major plot revolves around his struggles, his mental struggles, his internal struggles. The poem basically, it has, because it is a fragmented narrative, it has some sub themes, and you are going to find them in the course of the poem. However, there are some themes that are uh, present in the whole of the text, and that major those major themes are alienation, that is loneliness, existential crisis, that is what is the purpose of my being, and then societal conformity, the inability, that is the inability to uh, to adjust in the society despite having a desire to fix in, the desire to fit in. So these themes are going to be repeated throughout the course of the this poem. We find that Prufrock is also going through certain challenges in his in the poem. So uh, some of those challenges are his fear of aging, the passage of time, that is because he's getting old, and uh, and the societal expectations, and how his inability to come up to those societal expectations or societal you know societal uh, standards affect him, and how Prufrock is uh, because he's unable to adjust in the society, how he is grappling with these challenges at the moment uh, this poem was written. So then we come to the important literary techniques that the poet uses in the course of this poem. First of all, the poet uses he employs uh, the literary technique of dramatic monologue. And why he does so? Because this monologue, this talking to oneself, uh, this uh, conversation with himself, it allows the readers to have a glimpse into Prufrock's psychological happenings. That is why he is amongst the Eliot is amongst the fathers of the technique of stream of consciousness, amongst the the originators of that this technique. Obviously, Virginia Woolf is the most important uh, writer of who employs this technique. However, uh, Eliot is also amongst the users of this technique. Then we find that the poet uses fragmented narrative structure, and this is also done to reflect Prufrock's fragmented thoughts and enhances and these thoughts enhance the portrayal of his internal turmoil, the mental pain he's going through. In order to further enhance the effect of the psychological chaos Prufrock is undergoing, Eliot uses vivid imagery, very clear imagery, sensuous imagery, and whenever he is using this imagery, he juxtaposes many images that seem to be contrasting. However, this is also done to make the reader more aware of the mental condition of Prufrock. Then there are a lot of sensory details given. For example, all the senses, all the five senses have been used very skillfully by the poet in order to make the reader feel what Prufrock is feeling. Then we find that Eliot incorporates allusions to literary and historical figures such as Hamlet and Lazarus to deepen the poem's intertextual richness. Okay, so you are going to find these uh, references in the poem.
Please remember that the points that I have added here for critical appreciation are those points that are easier to remember because of the repetition that occurs in the poem, so that you have a solid answer which covers each and every point of this uh, poem, which was written in 1915 by T.S. Eliot. So let's move on to those figures of speech. So, the first literary device that has been used in the poem is the epigraph. The poem opens with an epigraph from Dante's Inferno, as I've already told you, and the significance of this figure of speech is that it sets the tone and foreshadows the themes of the poem, establishing a connection between Prufrock's internal struggles and the journey through hell. This may not be a physical hell only, but it is the hell which it is the mental hell which is the result of the uncertainty which surrounds Prufrock specifically and modern man generally. Then the other a very important figure of speech is allusion. We find that there are, throughout the poem, T.S. Eliot incorporates numerous allusions to other literary works, historical figures, and cultural references. These allusions enrich the poem's intertextuality uh, and add multiple layers of meaning uh, to the poem. For example, you find allusions to Michelangelo, the women who are constantly talking of Michelangelo. You have a reference to Lazarus at the end. Then you have John the Baptist and Hamlet, which contribute to the exploration of themes related to art, religion, and identity. Then another important literary figure is that or a figure of speech is uh, imagery. Eliot uses vivid imagery to create sensory impressions and to evoke emotions. So, some of the important imagery that have been used are that of fog, smoke, yellow smoke, patiently theorized on a table, then evening streets, porcelain. Then you have basically all these imageries that have been used are referring to the atmosphere of confusion, the atmosphere of decay and isolation in the modern world. Then you have a lot of metaphors that have been used in the poem, and these are employed basically to convey abstract ideas by comparing uh, one thing which might not be usually compared to another thing. However, metaphors here we find that metaphors are used like the metaphor of coffee spoons, which represents the mundane and trivial aspects of our existence. Not only our existence, but they also highlight Prufrock's sense of monotony and lack of fulfillment. You find a lot of repetition, many phrases, many images, and many questions which have been repeated throughout the poem. And this has been done basically to create a sense of rhythm. Not only do they create a sense of rhythm, but they also emphasize the key ideas, the key themes of the poem, and they reflect Prufrock's persistent internal dialogue, his stream of consciousness. For example, the question, "Do I dare disturb the universe?" highlights his hesitation and fear of societal judgment. Then you have the rhetorical figure of juxtaposition. Uh, Eliot juxtaposes contrasting images, ideas, and voices in the poem to create tension and complexity. For instance, he juxtaposes images of decay and vitality. For example, decay you can see in the yellow fog and the yellow smoke, whereas there are other times where we find he is also using the symbol of water, which is actually a symbol of redemption, of purification. And then he combines the mundane and the mythical, that is human beings with the mermaids, to depict the fragmented nature of modern existence. Then you have a lot of irony, uh, which actually is employed to convey a gap between expectation and reality, and having satirical undertone. We find that Prufrock, you know, he is Prufrock's self-awareness and ironic tone are basically reflecting his own recognition of his own limitations. However, despite knowing his weaknesses, his limitations, it is absurd that he does not move on, and his internal struggles continue. His psychological combat continues throughout the poem, and it seems as if the reader, is also going. Uh, you know, uh, Rather accompanying Prufrock on his roller coaster ride of his psyche. Then we find the technique of fragmented narrative here. The poem's fragmented uh, st- uh, narrative structure mirrors Prufrock's fragmented thoughts and his inner turmoil. The non-linear progression and shifting perspectives contribute to the portrayal of his existentialist crisis and sense of dislocation and his failure to connect with anyone. Then another important technique that has been employed is stream of consciousness technique, which the poem incorporates in the which sorry Eliot incorporates in the poem, and through this technique, he provides glimpses into Prufrock's inner monologue and the flow of his thoughts, fears, and doubts. This technique further adds depth to his character, and we the readers are allowed to experience his internal struggles along with Prufrock. Then another very important literary figure is that of personification. Many things have been personified here. For example, the yellow fog, which has been personified as a cat. Basically, personification is employed to give human qualities or characteristics to inanimate or animate objects or abstract concepts. Here, the yellow fog is described as rubbing its back upon the window panes, attributing a human like action to the fog and creating a sense of unease. Then we have hyperbole, which is exaggeration, it or emphasis in order to create a dramatic effect. So, Prufrock's self-deprecating remarks, that is, deprecating is when he is making himself a bit inferior, uh, such as I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. Uh, Such remarks emphasize his sense of the mundane and monotonous nature of his existence. Then we have paradox, and paradox refers to a statement or situation that appears contradictory but contains a deeper truth. So, Prufrock's statement, I have heard the mermaids singing each to each. I do not think that they will sing to me. It represents a paradoxical longing, desire for connection, and the belief that it is unattainable. So, Prufrock is going through the trauma of constantly desiring for something else and expecting something else. Then you have anaphora. Anaphora is it involves the repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of successive clauses or lines. Here you find in, I think, section 2, these lines have been repeated in the room. The women come and go, talking of Michelangelo, and I think section 2 starts and ends with these two lines. So this is a repeated phrase. In the room creates a rhythmic effect and emphasizes the women's preoccupation with superficial, shabby, dirty conversations. Then you have enjambment as well, where we find run on line, where enjambment occurs when a sentence or phrase runs over multiple lines without a pause or punctuation. Uh, you can see the example of enjambment in the lines to lead you to an overwhelming question, or do not ask what is it. So you find enjambment here. Then you have sarcasm, and sarcasm involves the use of irony to mock or to convey contempt. Prufrock, he adopts a sarcastic tone, and which can be seen especially in the lines when he says, "No, I am not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be," uh, where he dismisses having any heroic qualities or being a heroic persona. Then we have a lot of symbols in the poem. For example, in line 15, you have yellow fog, uh, which symbolizes the decay and uncertainty of the modern world. The adjective yellow adds a sense of ominousness and decay. Then in line 15, you have streets, and these streets are half deserted. What do these half deserted streets suggest? They tell you about the isolation and disconnection felt by Prufrock in the urban landscape. It also highlights the emptiness and lack of meaningful human interaction. Then you have the talking women in line 37, the talking women who are talking of Michelangelo, and their act of talking represents superficial conversations and social expectations. And further, they emphasize the shallow nature of Prufrock's encounters and his struggle to, engage in a meaningful communication or conversation. Then you have a symbol of bare arms, the bare arms of women, which show the vulnerability and exposure. It is the spiritual exposure that even these women fail to hide their in, inner corruption. So it also conveys Prufrock's sense of being emotionally naked and defenseless in his interactions with other people. He is unable to hide his uh, you know, own self in front of the uh, other naked people. Then you have the mermaids who are there in the sea, and they are singing there. And their singing symbolizes the unattainable desires and a mythical allure. A mythical allure means a magical attraction. They represent Prufrock's longing for connection and rejuvenation, yet he feels excluded from their song. Then you have Measured Time in line 79, which emphasize Prufrock's preoccupation with death, with time and his approaching death, and he is constantly contemplating that the time is passing, and uh, he has spent his life uselessly. It also reflects his sense of the mundane and monotonous nature of existence. Then comes the coffee spoons. That is, he has measured his life with coffee spoons, and the coffee spoons are actually the you know they represent the routine and the everyday physical aspects of life. Again, they are referring to the monotony and lack of fulfillment that Prufrock experiences. uh, then there are other symbols as well. You find the disturbed universe in line 127, where he says, do I dare disturb the universe? So here universe is symbolic, or this disturbed universe rather is symbolic of Prufrock's internal struggles and his hesitation to disrupt the established order and societal norms. It represents his fear of judgment, his fear of non-conformity, and his yearning for acceptance by the people around. Then there's another symbol as well, that is a patient who is etherized, who is under the effect of anesthesia, and it suggests the passive and lethargic condition, uh, showing Prufrock's inertia and lack of agency to do anything unique. And then you have the symbol of the sky, which has turned to a patient. It is like a patient. So this is a simile. However, this simile compares the sky to a patient who is emphasizing a sense of stillness and passivity and inaction. It adds to the overall atmosphere of stagnation and inaction and an inability to accomplish something new. Then you have the city in line 60, which and the city streets. uh, they evoke an urban environment, and it is very ironical that people yearn to be in urban environments, the environment of the cities, whereas you know they desire to be to have better lifestyle, but this lifestyle seems to be more you know dissatisfying. It doesn't satisfy them. Then there is another this shows that the disconnection and alienation which is felt by Prufrock, especially in the modern cityscape, and by modern man in general. Then you have the symbol of cups, and these cups are they symbolize the routine and mundane aspects of daily life again. And these are the measured cups, which are emphasizing the repetitive and monotonous nature of the existence of Prufrock. Then you have time, a very important symbol, which is surrounding the whole of the poem, and it assumes the central role in Prufrock's thoughts and anxieties. It underscores his preoccupation with the passage of time and his fear of wasted opportunities. He realizes in a line 120 that finally, if he cannot undo whatever he has done in the past, at least he can do something which can improve his life, his remaining life. Then you have the human voices, which come in the last line of the poem, and these human voices are actually symbolic of the desire for connection and engagement with others. They also suggest Prufrock's longing for authentic human interaction in a world that feels impersonal and isolating, because his own beloved has, uh, after spending some time with him, even she has finally given up the idea of, uh, living with Prufrock. So these are some of the symbols. There are other symbols. However, these are the repeated symbols. Therefore, they can make a good uh, impact on of your answer. So then we come to another very important question, which is the character sketch of J. Alfred Prufrock as depicted in his poem. So he is the central character of the poem, the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. He's portrayed as a deeply introspective, reflecting, and self-conscious individual, and some of his characteristics are described in the subsequent slides. The most important quality that is displayed by Prufrock is that of being insecure and a victim of self doubt. We find that he exhibits a pervasive sense of insecurity and self doubt, which leads to his hesitation and fear of taking action, and ultimately inaction. He constantly questions his worth and wonders about how he is perceived by others, how the others think of him. Some There are some quotations that uh, you know accompany, which are going to make your answer more strong and more appealing. He says, and indeed there will be time to wonder, do I dare, and do I dare, to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask what is it. So his insecurities and doubt are reflected through his desire to move on. However, he does not move on. He continues to question himself if he should, you know, uh, propose his lady love or not. Another very important quality of Prufrock is that he is going through an existentialist anxiety, and he grapples with this problem, and because of which he fears societal judgment. He does not want to be, labeled or stereotyped, or he does not want to be considered a social outcast, despite the fact that he feels alienated and trapped in a world that lacks genuine connections and meaningful experiences. Still, he wants to be, you know, he wants to conform to the society, to the demands of the society. So. Though he says that in the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo, yet he says he cannot dare to question them why these women are engaged in petty talk. And how should I presume? How should I think of you know of the world around me? Should I follow the world, or should I have the courage to question what the world does, and he doesn't take any action till uh, the end of the poem. Prufrock is haunted by the passing of time and the fear of aging. He laments his own insignificance, unimportance, and contemplates the meaninglessness of life's routine and mundane aspects. And he repeatedly says that I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. Then he says, I grow old, I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. He says that I am not left with much time to change myself. But despite this fear of aging, at least he moves on at the end. At least he is ready to disembark on a journey. Embark on a journey towards self realization. Another very important quality of Prufrock is his inability to act, and we find that he's constantly struggling with indecisiveness and an inability to act upon his desires and aspirations. He remains passive and passive aggressive. What is passive? Passive is when you are not doing anything, when you are inactive. And passive aggressive is that you are aggressive as well, that you are unable to do anything uh, solid. He's constantly questioning his ability to disrupt the status quo, the established society. It seems as if he has very high dreams. He desires to have a very to accomplish the impossible. However, when the time comes for action, he is constantly he falls a victim to of inactivity. And you find these in the lines, do I dare disturb the universe? I have heard the mermaids singing each to each. I do not think that they will sing to me. So how can you have a good result if you are pessimistic? You need to have a positive approach towards life, and this pessimistic approach compels him not to act. Uh, Despite his self doubt, Prufrock demonstrates a keen observational and reflective nature. We realize this through the allusions that are used in his speech, in his monologue, as well as we find that he analyzes his surroundings and scrutinizes the society he is a part of, and delves deep into his own thoughts and emotions. And we find that he has a very critical approach towards the society which uh, despite having the ability to attract modern man, fails to satisfy those you know uh, man. So what is the use of the society if there is no satisfaction, when there is no gratification? So and the analogies and the metaphors he uses are also very reflective of his observant nature. For example, he says, I measured out my life with coffee spoons, telling about the wastage of time and inactivity. And then in the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo when he's referring to the shallowness of women and their conversations. Then we also find that Prufrock experiences a sense of alienation and isolation. He feels disconnected from others and the world around him. He longs for a genuine connection, but finds himself unable to bridge the gap between his inner world and external reality, or the gap between him and his beloved. So we find that. He despite living in a society he that has certain expectations from us, he is unable to be unable to fit in the society. So he says, with a bald spot in the middle of my hair, they will say how his hair is growing thin. He has again, despite being among people, he is feeling lonely. He is feeling uh, you know alienated, to wonder, do I dare, because he knows that when he questions the people, they are not his question is not going to be welcomed by the people. So he repeats this question, do I dare, can I have the courage to face the the shameful response that would be of my questions. So he remains, despite living in this society, he remains alone, alienated and isolated. Let's have a recap of the poem, and which is actually the plot of the poem as well. So these are certain visuals that can help you in remembering the main points or related to the poem. Let's move forward. The initial part of the poem tells us about not only Prufrock, but we also come to know about his inability to accept the change that time is has brought, and it is this inability to fight time, which is becoming a trauma for a proof rock. So time has changed, and why has time changed? Because of World War I, because of mechanization, because of industrialization, and this image, and the start of the poem, both tell you about his obsession, his fear of passing time. Next, we find that Prufrock is also a victim of alienation. And despite being in the crowd, despite being with the people, he feels alienated. And this alienation makes him a misfit uh, in this society. Then we come to know about Prufrock's self reflection. And through his self reflection, we come to know that he is basically a victim of self doubt and constant uh, introspection, which is compelling him to be compelling him uh, not to fit in the society. He has realized here, or he is realizing here, that he is not only a misfit in the society, but that he has wasted his life with coffee spoons, with with some in petty activities, and now he is not left with much time to bring a positive change in the society. We also come to know through his self reflection that uh, he is totally, alienated. He is uh, suffering from solitude. However, this solitude does not go to waste. It gives him time to think about himself, and it also gives him time to think about the people he is surrounded by. He is also thinking about the way he can bring a change in a positive change in his life, so that the whatever has passed should not be, you know, that cannot be changed. But he realizes and accepts that he's only left with the the remaining life, which can only be changed if he takes a step forward, by rejecting the uh, rejecting the disturbing phases of his life. He wants to make a positive change, and that change is ultimately going to help him in being a better person. So later we find that the whole city is covered by a yellow fog and yellow smoke. So this these this fog and smoke have totally obscured the surroundings. This has not this adds to the mystery of the poem as well. However, this further tells us about the uncertainty, which is the result of the life that we are leading. So and Prufrock, being representative of modern man, he is also uncertain how he should proceed with his life. In this, with this uncertainty around, we find that the that Proof Rock is surrounded with a lot of people, surrounded by a lot of people. However, all these people are looking at him with a very critical, uh, you know, gaze. And these women are also there who are ready to pounce at him, ready to point any negativity that they feel in Prufrock's character. So, but this also tells us about their, the superficial conversations of women, and which make Prufrock disoriented and disconnected amidst the lively setting. So, despite being in a party, he is not in a party mood. When the human company fails to satisfy him, we find Prufrock having a desire to be with nature, and it is this company with nature that we realize that Prufrock is capturing. While looking at the sea, he's capturing the vastness of the sea, the vastness of the possibilities that still lie ahead, and they also this vastness tells us about Prufrock's longing for doing something greater, instead of just wasting his life in coffees and coffee parties and everything. Even when Prufrock decides that it is he who can make a change in his life, we find that he is, instead of being confident to start a new phase in his life, he becomes uncertain like Hamlet. However, he rejects the idea of being like Prince Hamlet, and he is hesitant to enter this newfound territory of self-realization. So we find that despite having the desire to move on, he still has fears, and these fears continue with him throughout the poem. Then we find Eliot. Uh, this is almost the end of the poem. Now we find Eliot looking at the sea looking at the mermaids who are singing to themselves. However, he has a desire that these mermaids sing with him, so that he is a bit comforted, because the world has failed to comfort him, to console him. So he has come to nature for some solace. So these mermaids, they tell us about Prufrock's fascination and longing uh, to be with these mermaids, and to be with the fantastical aspects of nature, yet he is unable to reach them due to his hesitation, his own hesitation. And then he realizes that finally most of the problems are nothing but a creation of his own self and his own inability. Now we find that Prufrock is aging again. After he sees the mermaids, he realizes that he is old, and now he is not left with much time to change, but to the only option left with him is to accept that he has grown old, and whatever has to be done in is to be done in this short span of time. He realizes that he is growing old. He says, I grow old, I grow old, I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. Y- s- he- Suggesting that he has accepted the reality that his the problem, the solution to his problems are to be found by himself and by no one else. So we find that finally he has resigned to fate. He is weary, he is tired, and but still he wants to continue so that he could properly utilize the rest of his life. Though he has accepted that he has grown old, but he still realizes, or he still questions, if he should proceed with the rest of his life according to his own likes or dislikes, or should he act as a social conform, a person who is totally adjusted to the uh, expectations of the society. So again, he is like a pendulum dwindling. He is moving from one end, whether he should accept reality or he should ignore it. He's constantly moving to and fro with how to, proceed in life, with this riddle, how to proceed in life. However, at the end, we find that Prufrock plucks the courage to take a step forward, and he has accepted this uncertainty which surrounds him and modern man in general. So he finds courage to challenge the societal norms and to move on. He takes a step forward, and he starts to uh, you know embark on a journey which is ultimately going to prove productive because of the initiative he has taken. We find that despite at the end of the poem, we find that despite growing old, Prufrock is he is filled his he is filled with determination and has a glimmer of hope that ultimately I might be able to, to lead a better life, better of my remaining life. So this shows that finally he has transformed into a resilient person who has uh, a desire to move on, who has a desire to change, who has a desire to improve life, who has a desire to rectify whatever he has done in the past. And for that, he can only do one thing, and that is to forget the past and to move on. In the conclusion, we need to know, or we need to write how what is the impact of this poem on the readers. So Prufrock emerges as a representation of the modern individual struggle with self-doubt, anxiety, and the failure to engage authentically with the world. This is a critique. It is This poem is basically Eliot's critique of societal norms and expectations, and these have been embodied through Prufrock's hesitations and insecurities, which are resonated with readers who are grappling with their own existential concerns in the early 20th century. This poem not only established Eliot as a prominent modernist poet, but also influenced subsequent generations of poets who sought to explore the complexities of human existence and to bring psychological aspects of human nature or human life into poetry. So, this is a very important poem, uh, and it is not only a literary classic, it is also a psychological classic. Thank you very much for your patient listening. I'll meet you in the next video on Wasteland, The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot.